Hi and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about Biology Chapter 2, which is cellular reproduction and biological reproduction. So welcome and enjoy. So the first section of this chapter was cellular reproduction, which started off with asexual cell division, which is known as mitosis in eukaryotic cells. And it also covered meiosis, which is in the germline cells. And in mitosis, I think I have a pretty solid understanding of what this is. The key points that I needed to remember are mitosis has regulatory spots after G1, which is controlled by P53, and also after G2 before it goes into mitosis, which is also controlled by P53. And there are also cyclins and cyclin-dependent kinases, which rise and fall in concentration, and they lead to transcription factors to signal the different phases. Then we have meiosis, which is similar to mitosis, but it is only in germline cells, and it produces haploid cells from diploid cells. And all the way until telophase and cytokinesis 1, the cell is diploid, but once cytokinesis 1 happens, then it's haploid with sister chromatids in meiosis 2. And I have problems remembering that, and I'm not going to forget it on the test. But at the end of meiosis 1, the cells are haploid. Moving on, we have the male and female reproductive systems and the cells that are key in each of them. In the males, we have the seminiferous tubules, which is where spermatozoans are formed, and then those are nourished by these Sertoli cells, which are also in the testes. And you have these interstitial cells of Leydig, which are producing testosterone and other androgens. And once developed, spermatozoans are fully formed. They're stored in the epididymis cells. And there's other cells, the seminal vesicles and the bubble urethral glands, which contribute fructose and other fluids. Now, the formation of the fully formed gamete starts with spermatogonium cells, and those are in interphase. After S phase, they are primary spermatocytes. After meiosis 1, remember that's meaning they're now haploid, we have secondary spermatocytes. And at the end of meiosis 2, we have fully formed spermatids, and once their maturation is finished, they are now spermatozoa. Now the gametes in females are called ova, and those are made in the follicles, which are in ovaries. One important note is that the follicles are not physically attached to the fallopian tubes, and so when the ovary ruptures and releases the ova, first in the abdominal cavity and then uptaken into the fallopian tubes. One important thing is that the oogonium cells create ovum and polar bodies during gestation, and by birth all of them are primary oocytes. and those are arrested in prophase 1. Finally, in adults, the ovulating egg is then moved to metaphase 2, where it is a secondary oocyte, and only when it is fertilized will it continue to be a true ovum and be diploid. One thing I don't have noted here is the ova and oocytes are surrounded by what's known as the zona pellucida and the corona radiata, which are a layer of cells and an acellular mixture, which is what the sperm penetrates to get into the cell. Finally, this chapter goes over the menstruation cycle. So it starts off with gonadotropin releasing hormone, GnRH, released, and that promotes follicle development by releasing follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone from the anterior pituitary gland. Both of these hormones cause estrogen to increase, and which stimulates the decidua in the uterus. That is called the follicular phase, and when the luteinizing hormone becomes to a certain capacity and it starts to surge, it triggers ovulation. And the surge occurs because estrogen stops having a negative feedback at a specific threshold and starts having a positive feedback effect. After the ovulation begins the luteal phase, where luteinizing hormone promotes the ruptured follicle to become the corpus luteum, which begins to make progesterone, which maintains the lining of the uterine wall. And that lining, remember, was because it started to grow because of this estrogen. And high estrogen and progesterone levels begin to have negative feedback on the gonadotropin releasing hormone, which stops stimulating follicular stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. And so now there is an egg in the fallopian tubes, and if it is not fertilized, menstruation occurs as the estrogen and progesterone levels drop. And if those levels drop, that means the endometrial lining of the uterus is going to not be maintained and will be sloughed off. If, however, fertilization does occur, then the blastula, which we learn about in the next chapter, produces HCG, which is similar to luteinizing hormone, and that maintains the corpus luteum. And finally, menopause occurs when the ovaries stop producing estrogen and progesterone. And this stops, which causes follicular stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone to rise due to there not being any negative feedback. Alright, so that was reproduction and the cellular and sexual side of that. Next, we're going to go over organic chemistry tomorrow, chapter 1. So that's going to be fun. See you then.